You got Brent here too.
All right, we are going to call this special board meeting to order at 6:12 p.m. This board has a land acknowledgement and an anti-racism statement that we have written in support. It is posted on the board's website. Roll call tonight. I've not heard from Brian or Joel, and they're absent. And then Keith said that he was not going to make it. Otherwise, I think everyone else is with us. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, move on from that. Any announcements?
I've got a quick one. Our ballots should be either the outbound postage got sent in today. The Unilect should either be mailing on the 1st or the 4th, one or the other. They're all set to go, and they've printed our documents and everything's up and running. So things should be out here, leaving their offices very shortly.
Excellent news. Josh?
Yeah, there will be another Clean Green event next Saturday, October 9th. I believe that's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you got a bunch of shrub sticks, all that good stuff, bring it down to, what is that place called? Right by Gate 5, not Area
It's
Z.
our overflow parking
Yeah,
area.
the overflow parking.
Will there be signage to direct people there?
There's a sign out. Yeah, there's directional.
People don't get lost. Yes.
All right, any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we will move to property owner comments. Looks like we got one person joining us.
All
If you'd like
right.
to speak, Ann.
Let's see if Ann would like to jump in. She's familiar with how to join the meeting, but not seeing a raised hand.
All right, we'll keep moving then. Thank you, John. Do we have a motion to move into closed session?
Motion to move into closed session at 6:14 p.m.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, I'll see you over there.
Hey, Kevin, I see your message. I figured I'd just pick up the mic. We are still in, well, the board is still in closed session. This is the open session that they'll return to once they're done in their closed session, which has been going on for a while. But we are not live streaming tonight as well due to a technical issue at the start of the meeting. But they should be returning hopefully soon. And I say that for everyone. I'm pretty sure the board, 2.5 hours of closed sessions got to be quite the meeting. No, they'll have video when they return to open session as well, as we're just not live streaming on YouTube. The video will be posted to YouTube at the end of the session, though. Once the video downloads and we can get it up to YouTube, we'll have that there tonight.
Got everyone?
You think so?
I think so. All right, do we have a motion to come back into open session?
Move to go back into open session at 8:45.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to new business. We have the board policy for our proxy voting and then putting floor voting to written ballots only. So Linda had, and the entity committee had put together, and we discussed the sins and some guidelines and a proxy form. And from that, we worked with Richard to put together this policy. And yeah, it's not necessarily intended to be the instructions on how the proxy is supposed to be completely administered. That's, you know, kind of why we have Linda's instructions and the form and everything to go with this. This kind of outlines those general guidelines of how the proxy will be, how it will work. Basically, you'll see in the paragraph after the therefore statement, you know, that, well, one thing, we tried to make this universal to any general meeting of the membership, basically. So that could be an SGM and AGM. It's not necessarily specific to this upcoming AGM. So that way we don't have to continually redo a board policy for each meeting because it has like specific dates in it. But you'll see under the therefore statement, that first paragraph, like, you know, at the meeting of the membership, members of their proxies who are present in person may only vote by ballot executed in writing. So the new state law allows floor voting at the AGM to happen, and they give a whole slew of ways you could vote: voice vote, standing, show of hands, written ballot, whatever. As one of the whereas statements, we're looking as the board of directors to make those processes and procedures the most efficient, and a written ballot is the easiest way. I think we've already kind of discussed that, for entity to collect those ballots and count those votes and bring them into the grand total of everything, as opposed to people standing up or using their voice or their hands or whatever. Also, how we've typically done it in the past is by written ballot. And so that's basically what that first paragraph saying. And then with respect to the proxy voting, you know, it gets into, you know, some of the specifics with the proxy voting. You know, Richard did tell us that we shouldn't be offering just a general or just a directed proxy, that the law allows for both unless our bylaws specify otherwise. So next year we could propose something to the membership to put in the bylaws that says, you know, we only want directed proxies, which means that member tells that proxy how they want it voted, whereas a general just allows the proxy to vote how they choose for that member. But at this point, because we don't have any language in our bylaws regarding that, state law dictates. State law number 2 basically gets into state law, basically says the only way to revoke a proxy is by giving actual notice of ratification to either the secretary or president of the board. And then that whole statement is basically from state law. The death and disability of an owner too doesn't revoke a proxy unless actual notice is given. That's all comes from the RCWs. Number 3 kind of gets into some of the specifics of what Linda put together for the instructions. You know, just basically dictating, you know, their proxies have to be signed and sealed in an envelope and returned to admin the day before the general meeting happens. which is what Linda had in her instructions. She had actual dates for this specific AGM. So we generalized that statement. You know, and then it also adds on that if someone has a power of attorney, so they've already granted someone else like their ability to act on behalf of that property, they need to provide that power of attorney with their proxy to do that. So that, you know, if that power of attorney decides to give a proxy to somebody else, then they need to show us that power of attorney to prove that that person has that power. And 4 is, you know, very straightforward. Basically, you know, if you own multiple lots, you get multiple votes. If you own multiple lots, you need to get multiple proxy forms filled out to get your multiple ballots. You know, which is consistent with how we already do things. And then the last one is just, you know, basically saying the entity is responsible and has their process on the floor of how they'll issue those ballots to those proxy people to vote at the general meeting. And the proxies have to vote at the general meeting, not the morning of, not in the ballot drop box. They have to vote at the meeting. The only other thing that I think that I didn't mention in here was Richard did say we can restrict the proxies to just SVCA members. So we can require that, you know, we can't dictate a general or directed proxy, but we can dictate that you can only give your vote to a proxy who's also a member here. So you can't give it to someone who lives in Bellingham who has, you know, likely no idea what even goes on out here. Why you would do that, I don't know, you know, or anything like that. Obviously, if you have a power of attorney, you know, that person always has the ability to like vote for you, but that's a, you know, a power of attorney is kind of like a permanent proxy, I guess, I think, for your property as a whole and everything like that. So yeah, that's kind of what was put together. We vetted it with Richard. He felt like it met, you know, all the intents or whatever that have been put forth in the new RCWs that we've been kind of going through the last few meetings. So I know Linda had a couple emails. I didn't get a chance to respond to her before the meeting. And Nancy had sent an email too. So I'll just let Linda take the floor. She's got her hand up, so I'm sure she's going to ask about it.
So I guess my question is, if it says that a person may vote by ballot, if they're how do I say it, an attorney in fact or a POA, they may not be a member of the association. It could be a son or daughter that lives outside of the association. So I don't know how that restriction works, especially if we're talking about POAs or attorney in fact that someone has already has a form in place that says this person, you know, handles my affairs. The other thing I have a question about is in item I, it says votes allocated to a lot or unit owner may be cast pursuant to a directed proxy. Have you decided you're going to stick with directed proxies rather than requiring general proxies also? Because that isn't what you told me on Thursday.
The policy says both.
No, it says here, votes allocated to a lot or owner under one may be cast pursuant to a directed proxy.
I think you're looking at the last version.
Oh, did you update it and I missed the?
Yeah, we updated it in the agenda packet because we went back to Richard.
Sorry, I printed it out really early because
we made a couple changes based on the comments Richard gave us. So,
okay.
And that was one of them he gave us was you need to offer both. And the other thing he gave us was you could restrict the proxies to Sun Valley members. And then he changed the language in 4. It used to just say if a member owns multiple lots, a proxy must be executed. He added the and desires to vote by proxy. language in there, and then he re-reviewed your forms, Linda, and the instructions. He felt like it was all, I got that back. It's been a busy day, but I got that back, and he said it all looks kosher to him.
Well, I kind of did what he did and added boxes and stuff, and I sent that to you. I don't know if the board has to look at it. One last thing that the N&E committee's concerned about is 5, and I don't know if that's been changed, because it says the N&E committee shall be responsible for issuing ballots to all proxy holders present at the general meeting. It sounds like we're going to go around and hand out proxies to people at the meeting, and that isn't how it works.
Well, you're going to be issuing ballots to those people to vote at the general meeting.
I know, it just
Is what it's saying, because I did read what you and Nancy said, and part of what you guys were saying was it doesn't dictate when proxies have to be in by, but
That's right.
three actually does dictate that.
Yes.
I used your exact sentence. The only thing I changed was instead of 4:30 on Friday, the whatever date, November 5th or whatever, I just said the day before the general meeting to generalize the policy so it can be used into the future. You know, if we change our bylaws, then, you know, and put actual rules in place in the bylaws, or when we get the N&E manual updated to have this in it, you know, which is
I gotcha.
Richard said
That's
is an
okay.
end
I
goal
just
for
need
next
to
year.
look at it. I'm just concerned about that last sentence, you know, that I would, you know, somewhere I wish it would say, you know, the N&E shall be responsible for issuing ballots to all eligible proxy holders. See section 3 or whatever that's above, that explains it more, not like we're just going to come and give you one at the meeting if you're because there's a process, because the actual proxy itself is going to much like we used to.
What if it just said all registered proxy holders because they have to, or something? I don't know.
You know, it's just got to say something.
Because you'll have your instruction, like this policy is not what we're like pushing out to the membership on how to do a proxy. We're going to use your instructions. Like that's going to be what we give. You know, that has a clear step-by-step, you know, this is just a general overarching policy to like, you know, give the N&E guidance that like, N&E committee is the responsible party for making sure a proxy has a ballot to vote at that general meeting, you know, kind of thing.
Yep.
But
okay, that's cool.
I saw Joel's hands and then Sonia.
Yeah, this is somewhat related to point 4, but I forget where I read this or if I'm missing it here, but isn't there sort of always a concern with like proxy farming? Aren't there usually some sort of limitations on how many proxies a single person can, or a number of memberships? Just looking at it, and if there is a limit, you probably want somebody who owns multiple lots to be able to circumvent that. So if they have 13 properties, they can have the same person submit all 13 proxies, even if the limit was like 10. But is there a limit?
I don't believe we've put any sort of limit in place on, you know, if someone owns X number of lots and they get X number of votes, I guess. Maybe I'm not sure what you're asking.
You know, I think what the concern was, and I can't remember right now if we put it in our rules, is that a person could only do 5, but I don't know if that's against state law. I have this whole thing with proxies has come like at the 11th hour, and to do diligent research into what you can and can't do, it can get really touchy.
I mean, Richard has reviewed the policy, just, you know, so everyone.
The policy and all our stuff, and he's happy with it. So either it's there or it's not.
So he would have vetted those laws, you know, on our behalf. And we all have looked at them to some extent too, you know, at least I know I have and you have and whatnot. So, you know, are we lawyers and is it thorough? No, but Joel, do you have more? Sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, I think
Oh.
that's the last I have. I have an article that I owe Brent, and I had him pull it because of your late your late call to me, and spent the rest of the day changing directions and proxy forms.
Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to say, somebody would have to work pretty hard to gather up a big chunk of proxy votes, but just knowing that hypothetically somebody could show up with votes from 100 different members or something. I don't know if that's something that people usually safeguard against, or if it's just, if there are enough.
In the past, that happens. Let me say this. When
We did put the notary as a way to
Yeah.
slightly deter that.
One of the things I wanted to say is there used to be when you could do, and I don't know how you'll do it next year because it's state law, but there used to be a directed proxy, and there were actually people that were named by the association, and we hired somehow that were directed proxies that if you wanted to, you could give them to those people. And one would, and they would come to the meeting and they would vote X number of proxies. It's a very strange, archaic system, is all I can say.
Yeah, boo on the legislator for this one.
It's beyond me. Even Unilect, who is the company that the third party vendor, I asked them, I said, have you done a lot of these lately? And she said, not since everybody's moved to mailed ballots, which are also considered by the Secretary of State to be absentee ballots. So you have that ability to have someone, to submit your vote and have it count without having somebody else vote for you. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I don't think we have we don't have a limit, like you said, Joel. We did require a notary from both the owner and the proxy to put some onus on everyone and extra work to be able to utilize the proxy. It could be something that we see how many proxy votes we get in this election, and if it's minimal, then maybe we don't need to worry about a limit. And if we get a whole bunch of them, then maybe we want to make a bylaw adjustment, and propose that next year.
Yeah, probably best to just wait and see.
Sonia?
Well, I had a question, but a couple of comments too. I don't think the law allows you to put a limit. I think if I understand it, it's basically saying that if you own multiple lots and you want to vote by proxy, then you execute a proxy, as individual proxy on each lot. It doesn't allow, there's nothing in there that allows for a limit that I can read. The other thing, I'm just going to talk about the legislator. I just feel like Senator Jamie Peterson should be called out on that, since he's the guy that brought us to Kiowa. He obviously doesn't want community members to actually have a voice and a say. He's trying to discourage voting and participation. Really disappointed. And if anybody's listening from his district, I would encourage you not to support him. So, but my question was this. I'm unclear how, okay, if we have them, if they have to turn their proxies in by 4:30 so that you can vet it and everything, and then you're saying you're not, they have to, the proxy has to be in person, right? They have to be at the meeting in person to be able to actually vote. And you're saying you're not going to give them a ballot during the meeting? I don't understand how they're supposed to vote.
We didn't. So what's going to happen is when we get a proxy, we're going to register it. The master spreadsheet not only has mailed ballots where you check it, and in-person voting where you check it for each member of the association. We also have proxies. of if you gave me your proxy, I would have under your name that you have a proxy out there. Then the person who is going to vote for you, that proxy is registered. We're going to give a receipt to that person. They will bring it to the meeting with them on Saturday, because hopefully they're all, I'm not going to get them all on the last day. That, or I'm going to be sitting, because proxies will have to be, the paper copies will have to be kept because they're an official voting thing. But then they will bring that to where we are registering people. You know how we do it where members of NNE have you sign that sheet and stuff, but then you get your vote, your ballot from Unilect. You will sign that sheet again as a proxy with the receipt. If nothing else, we may even do a separate sign-in sheet for proxies. I just haven't gotten that far yet in the process to where we know who they are. Then we send them to Unilect and they will issue them a ballot, and that's what they take with them and vote. So it's a fairly simple process. Because if they have a receipt, I know that indeed that is that person who says they are, who says, this is Linda Bradley and I'm voting for Sonia Volt, and because I've got the receipt from the NNE committee, because it's already been registered and vetted.
So they're going to get that ballot and then just take it to the floor and turn it in, like during the floor voting?
Yes, because for each one of your measures, if you look at the agenda, it says AJ will read the measure. Then there's discussion. If there is any, people come up and talk. I think people are going to be allowed to speak on Zoom if they want. And then AJ will say, at this time, please vote your ballot. And there's going to be a little pregnant pause, and then he's going to go on to measure 2, 3, 4, and go through that same process. At the end of where all the voting takes place, you then ask anybody that has a ballot from the floor to hold their ballot up. There are 2 people up there from NNE that will come around and collect them and bring them down, and they will be counted. And then we will, it's real simple, because people can also, regular members that want to get an in-person ballot that day can also, if they choose, vote from the floor, because we have a live meeting. Most people turn them in the ballot box down there, but every now and then there's 1 or 2 people that will hold it for the meeting, and we just wait patiently, because nothing can happen until we have all the ballots. I have, and just so the board knows, I have at least currently 3 people who are going to assist Unilect in opening the envelopes, which is what took so long last year, because I didn't know how they handled them. And after going through over 1,000 votes, it took 2 people a lot of time. But I have talked to Unilect, and they said with 3 people, it'll go really fast, because they have a rapid electronic opener, so it's just them taking them out of the different envelopes. So that's where we're at. But I do have 3 volunteers that are vetted already that I'll have to find out when Unilect wants them to come and when they want to start doing that. I'm gonna ask John to just set a camera up down there. Am I gonna do from 8 to 12? Oh, heck no, I ain't gonna do that, because there's lots of the time he sets up and calibrates their machinery and stuff that they use for their voting. And just, it'll be when they start opening envelopes and doing that sort of thing that we'll start filming and film till the end, and it's there for anybody that wants to see it.
Thank you.
That's my plan.
Do we feel we need to add that word registered to section 5? The NNE committee shall be responsible for issuing ballots to all registered proxy holders present at the general meeting.
Can we do that? Can we add that word registered? I think that helps, because I think otherwise people think they're going to be able to come to the floor and go, I want a proxy. No, that doesn't work. Sorry. And the
I'm
instructions.
fine with that. I don't see that changing
Okay.
anything, but do we have any other concerns or questions about proxy or floor voting? Brian?
I just want to express that I'm ready to vote. Ready to vote on this motion.
All right, well, let's
Is there a
I
motion?
move. I was gonna say, I move that the board approve the resolution to establish a board policy for proxy and floor voting at the general meetings of the membership with the amendment to section 5, that the any committee shall be responsible for issuing ballots to all registered proxy holders present at the general meeting.
Second.
Second.
I,
All right, I'll call the question. I'm just read the motion. I'm not gonna reread it. So all those in favor? All right, any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. And Linda, we can get your instructions and all that stuff finalized here this weekend, and I think probably want to try to get them on the website starting Monday.
yep.
Well,
Well, wait a minute. Well, there was a thought in the NNE while we're discussing this of, do you want to put them out there before? I'm assuming that I have been told that the members will get their ballots by then. Was just the committee was concerned that if you put them out there too far in advance, the proxy holders get a jump on anybody that's getting a regular ballot.
okay.
That makes
Yeah, we
sense.
could wait until after ballots have been received. I guess you just coordinate with me when you and your committee thinks we need to get those instructions posted,
Okay,
and we'll work with staff to get them on the website.
sounds like a plan.
Okay. All right, well, that is the only business we got for tonight, so we'll move into property owner comments and then we'll go home. That should be done.
Yeah, we did have a couple more people join us, and Kevin has his hand raised. Kevin, I'll go ahead and bring you over to the meeting. Give your name and address, please.
Yeah, Kevin on Lake Louise Drive. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thanks for your volunteerism. Tried to comment last week, but to no avail. But I see justice prevails because you all look exhausted and now you have to listen to me. So I give a little bit of revenge, and my apologies to John. You're just collateral damage, I guess. Anyway, I want to talk about a subject that I addressed in previous board meetings and emails I sent to the board, and that's environmental stewardship, and more specifically, tree preservation. So trees are important to this community. The reason they're important is twofold. First, they're highly valued by the community. And I know this because I looked at the survey and I looked at every single answer, and every question asked something to the effect of, what do you like most about Southern Valley or why you live here? The response was the trees or the forests or nature. And there were thousands of responses, and the lack of variance was notable. So, and it's not just the aesthetics, but also it's the important role that trees play in fostering a robust wildlife and healthy ecosystem and all that. So I think we can all agree to that. And the second reason trees are valuable is because trees are of paramount importance with regard to mitigating phosphorus flow via sediment loading into the lake, our drinking water, and the drinking water for about 100,000 people. And I say phosphorus, but that's obviously inextricably tied with dissolved oxygen and and there's also fecal coliform. I think were the three primary reasons why we got on the 303D listing. But there's also a lot of other, and all those three require mitigation plans. But also testing found mercury in fish tissue, dioxins, PCBs, pesticides, and a few other nasty things that at least not yet, they haven't risen to levels that warrant a mitigation plan. So not only do trees keep pollutants out of our drinking water, but it's a very cost-effective mitigation strategy. In fact, preserving trees and forested land is much more cost-effective than engineered mechanical solutions, such as the contact system that they're going to install there that you've discussed at previous meetings. So, you know, I want to just, so I think we can agree that we should be making an effort to preserve trees to the extent possible for the community welfare and watershed protection. And, you know, I want to be inclusive, so I'll say property values also for people who may not care about the environment. But apparently the contractors and builders are not aware of this because it appears they're cutting down trees with reckless abandon, even denuding lots entirely of trees. And I know this because I've seen the aftermath. I've seen a lot of stumps, meaning I have seen a lot of stumps, but I saw a lot with only stumps, consisting of only stumps. I've seen, you know, I don't give social media too much credence, but it's a frequent topic of discussion on social media. And then there was the ACC meeting on July 22nd that, and I'm not going to admonish volunteers, but basically one of the committee members, a contractor was voted to proceed against the wish of one of the committee members who voted not to allow that particular contractor another opportunity to kill trees. Apparently they had a history of doing that. And at the last board meeting, or maybe the one before that, I don't remember, this board seemed pretty unanimous in its recognition of the problem. So I hope, and I'll say also, even when all the components are in place, so ACC gives direction and there's an informants arm to the ACC, the system, as I understand it, and I might be wrong and maybe you can enlighten me, but it's pretty much useless for stopping reckless or unscrupulous contractors, right? So my understanding is you have to file a grievance or a report, get the report reviewed, and then you take action, which is great for maybe removing a decrepit wheelless junk car off someone's property. But the fact is trees can be killed in minutes. And once the trees are gone, they're gone. So, and we really have no effective recourse with regard to contractors. I mean, the fines are ridiculously small. So it's more of a cost of doing business in Sudden Valley rather than a deterrent to cutting down trees. And I realize the county also monitors and has a responsibility here. But we're the front lines and we're the primary beneficiaries of a healthy forest. So, with little or no chance of getting caught and no real consequences, contractors will continue to cut trees with impunity. So I know the board is empowered to redress this problem, and I would appreciate if you give some consideration to this. And so, yeah, I think I've said enough. So see if you have any comments for me.
I'll just say, like, you know, a couple things. Like, we are, you know, I don't know if you watched the last meeting or not, we are looking to bring in an environmental planner to help support the ACC, you know, so we're looking to bring in a stronger skill set to help us make sure we're, you know, planning, you know, and dealing with our natural resources in the best way possible. Some of these lots are so small that they're actually are allowed to be clear cut. That's just the rules that Whatcom County and the ACC have set up at the moment. You know, it really is a function of the ACC, and their governing documents, you know, have them, you know, dealing with those, you know, those issues and stuff like that. So, you know, that's, you know, I don't know, I guess that's kind of a major component of it too. You know, the governing documents specifically give that role to the ACC.
Well then, sorry, let me respond to that. So first of all, I hope this the environmental manager position focuses on education and measurement rather than enforcement. If there are documents, if it's bylaws or I'm not sure what is, those are not immutable. Those can be changed, and I would encourage you to do so. I think there's here the city of Bellingham is purchasing lots of, I don't know what the last count was, like 2,200 acres of land to preserve trees. And at the very least, we should go to the Whatcom Lake, what's it called? Watershed Advisory Board, the board that advises the city on the purchase of land, and say, hey, we have these lots that we will offer. I will say, I was a little bit disturbed because I read something where in 2018 there was a, and I want to get this right because I think this language really says it all. 20 lots were sold, 20 excessive lots were sold in a clearance sale. And they were sold dirt cheap for like $5,500 on average, I think. I would argue they're not excessive. No lot in the Southern Valley should be considered excess, and they certainly shouldn't be selling them, at a clearance sale. I think 4 were retained for Beltway, but I was wondering because I looked online and I didn't see any documentation on what the guiding, what the regulations or bylaws said about how we decide how many lots we buy versus sell, or where those lots are located, and how big those lots are. So I don't know if that exists, but otherwise, how are these decisions made? Because I think the same thing happened the year before. 12 lots were sold, I think in a deed in lieu type of transaction. But
Well,
again,
we lost about the ones you're talking about the previous year. We lost about $90,000. That was a decision by the board and the general manager at the time. Their reasoning had to do with it. They said they were looking long term, wanting to bring in dues money. Because I understand your heartbreak about watching these lots be clear cut. I fought that previous board numerous times over that. I had lots next to me that they wouldn't even let me buy because they knew I was going to put it into green space and they wouldn't get ongoing dues. Instead, they sold it to a developer. So it is heartbreaking to watch it happen. By that same token, even though that should not have happened, we are where we are now, and on these lots, when we do have a minimum footprint, I think it's 1,000 square feet, and like AJ was saying, that's part of our documents. And so when these people have bought those, and they have these requirements of a minimum size footprint, and they're a small, a small lot. A lot of times the county does allow them to totally clear cut, and because I've talked to them about some of these lots too, and so they can clear cut, and then what they have to do is then plant a certain amount of canopy cover, like a 30% canopy cover, and the option may not be these big trees; it may be a certain amount of shrubs or smaller trees, and that type of thing. But almost all of those that you're talking about, they aren't actually violating our the Whatcom County overlay or even our restrictive covenants to cut those trees. They're following what the county's allowing them to do.
Well, so that's the way it was. Can we change that? I mean, can we prevent this from happening again? Can we have, set some criteria and have guidelines for preserving property, and, how many lots and location of lots and where those lots are located? I frankly, I haven't really seen it in person yet, but I will, except for some short visits. So it's not like it's in front of me every day, but I know it's happening. And I would contend that we should stop it, honestly, frankly. So
there was a density reduction plan in place, and then at some point they decided that they didn't need it anymore. If the community is certainly something, and it may be something we can talk about putting on the survey this next year and maybe, if enough people want it. But it is going to, I know Brian mentioned some suggestions, but there's going to take money to buy those vacant lots back that we gave up, unfortunately. And so it's certainly something to consider. We just have to figure out how do we get there, right?
Well, yeah, but you could, I mean, if you did a life cycle cost analysis, is it more expensive than alternative solutions? Because for $5,500 a lot, or whatever the average was, that's pretty low compared. I'm of the opinion that the Sudden Valley will share more and more of the cost burden for implementing these mechanical solutions, like the contact filter system. And we will, I think whether it's increased excise taxes or higher fees or whatever. But so we should, we should look at it, and then, I guess I'm stumping for saving the trees. No pun
Got
intended.
Sam and Linda.
I like that idea, and I thought about it quite a bit myself, but I also do know that we run a budget on dues. And depending if it's one lot here, one lot there, that's not much. But if it's hundreds of lots, then that will put a strain on the budget, because people are paying dues on those lots. Any of them that are out. I don't know if Sudden Valley still owns lots, but all the ones that are owned by whomever, they're all paying dues, and they're almost paying the same as what everybody pays on an improved lot. And at that point, so that money, if it's by 100 lots, that's quite a bit of money that will affect the budget, which would in turn cost everyone. It would cost everyone in some higher dues. So that's a discussion to have. Is everyone out here in Sudden Valley willing to increase the dues in an attempt to buy out some of those spaces and then and own it? Because then we're still, once we do that, we're also obligated to maintain those lots for safety. And so then we will be paying instead of drawing money from those lots. So it's not it is a thing that'll cost the budget. And I totally agree with you. I've been out there places and I've seen lots of trees complete, the one behind our house. It's sad to watch, but they took down what they needed to build this big house. And it's an expensive proposition.
Linda, then Josh.
Kevin, before the ACC or Sudden Valley even sees a contractor or an owner's anticipation to build a home, the county has they've submitted their plans to the county, and they've done, they've looked at their trees. They've all been tagged and stuff, so they know what they are. And the county has told them you can do that. Sudden Valley, I don't think, can overrule that decision by the county. I just went through that with 2 homes that are being built by me, where it was like right up to the property line. And it's like, I'm now looking in what I think is going to be the kitchen of the house next door, and it's like just a stone's throw. Sudden Valley, how they acquire lots sometimes, Sudden Valley's actually put 1,400 lots into green space out of the original platted lots in here. And what happens is over time, and because we agree to do this rather than let them go to a sheriff's sale, people may own a lot and someone in the family dies, and the family wishes to give the property back to Sudden Valley. They have to be current in their dues and that sort of thing, and it's looked at. But somehow we end up getting our lots back, and those are the ones that are sometimes then resold again.
Mhm.
But Sudden Valley tries. It's just, I think that sometimes, at least for me, I find more that it's frustrating from the county's point of view, and that they've made a decision that, you know, people can clear these lots, and as long as we have homes that are now close to 3,000 square feet on small lots, you know, the only way you can do it is, you know, I suppose we could actually require less square footage. That would be one way that you could limit what the county would allow to be built, but that's about the only thing you could do.
Okay. I'd say a couple things in response. First to Samuel's point, I can't speculate. I don't know how many lots we're talking about here, but it seems like the only data we have on how willing the membership would be to preserving those trees, whether it's and what at what cost is the survey, and maybe we should take it to the community and see what they feel. And so Linda's point, so we're not the only buyers in the market. I mean, these lots could be sold to the city of Bellingham, which they are buying lots, acreage around the watershed. Not too much in Bellingham, it looks like. Yeah, but I'm sure that, you know, they'd be interested. At least we should see if they're interested, I guess, would be my response.
Josh.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for hanging with us again, Kevin, and
Yeah.
Waiting to talk. I'm sorry that it's not worked out in your favor lately.
One quick thing about that, maybe I know that when you have closed meetings, there's a lot of, on that comment period, there's a lot of float on the agenda. Maybe you could anchor that a little bit, and then you know, develop a protocol that people know, so that because I've not that I haven't enjoyed it, but I've sat through a lot of these meetings, more than probably ever should anyone else.
Yeah, you got to
Well,
tell
we
us
can
Bruce
relate
to
because we
stop
sit through.
talking.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate your volunteerism.
So what I wanted to touch on is, well, first of all, I think we should definitely go right to the survey, and I think LRPC should be talking about some of this. Like for me, you know, I'll straight up tell you there's a build happening right next to me, and you know, I didn't think anyone was ever going to buy that lot. You know, the neighbor on the other side of us, you know, just like we had this empty lot that no one's ever going to do anything with. That's awesome. And then, you know, eventually all the trees came down, and I've never seen anything like that, especially coming from Florida and seeing 140-foot trees just dropping next door to me. You know, it's kind of crazy. You know, I don't know what I wasn't informed that they were going to be discussing this at ACC, but I went back and checked the meeting, and I saw where they were marking the trees and stuff like that. And you know, I think there might have been one or two that might have accidentally been kind of taken down. So like for me, like I want to see the metrics of this. Like, are we talking about, you know, are lots really being clear cut, or is it what we're seeing that's impacting us, and then there's some trees being saved in the back, or are there any that have actually been taken down that there shouldn't be taken down? You know, I think we need to look at metrics like that, just to be sure. But at the same time, I think going to the community and getting some input with the survey is a great idea. And
Paying attention will save individual trees, Josh. That's true. That's such a good point, because they're going to take as many trees as they can, and sometimes unnecessary trees because they're making money off of it.
Yeah.
Douglas firs are
Well,
you know, some of the most lucrative trees. I was just reading that.
yeah, I mean, I can't myself speculate for that, especially like being a representative of the community. You know, we got builders out here, and I think we have to, you know, dance a fine line here as well. But I would like to see, you know, does that happen often, and what can we do to, and that's where, you know, Kevin mentioned the fines. You know, I don't know, I haven't looked at, you know, comparable fines for that type of thing, but if there is more education that we can do on our end, with the developers and so on and so forth. At least get some options down. I
Not
don't
exactly. Well, I wasn't meaning to diss builders, but I was talking about human nature.
I'm not.
And,
I'm not saying
I
you
mean,
were either.
people are
I'm
going to
just-
do what they do,
just
and they're going to
putting it
make a
out there
profit.
before I start getting a lot of emails.
It's the American way, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we have lots of options that we can look at here.
I'd like to meet some builders. I'd like to meet some folks that do, that build around trees, that consciously pay attention to these things. I think Andy's builder, Andy was talking of a builder that does that. It would be nice to have a conversation about that.
Except, well, depends on whose lot he's on, because that's the thing. I think that's what Josh was saying. It's kind of subjective, because that builder has also had similar complaints too about, because on some of these smaller lots, they end up taking down trees, and there has been incidents where just due to machinery, et cetera, where tree roots have been damaged, or they've hit a tree and it needed to come down. What the Sun Valley's policy is on that is that if a tree can't be, if something has been damaged, because sometimes that does happen, because the county will mark trees to save, and but usually those are trees that are kind of on the periphery. They're not the big, significant trees and everything. Then those builders have to replace that. They have to replace that. Any tree loss, there's a mitigation plan in place that they have to replace. There's even like the county has I don't know it exactly, but it's like, you knock one of these trees, you've got to replace it with 3 of these other trees,
Right.
so it's pretty significant. It's not just a fine, but they actually have to replace.
Well, yeah, I think the Sun Valley is $1,000 for the first tree, 10,000 for successive trees, and you got to replace a tree. The county, you got to replace a ratio of supposedly 3 to 1. But has that ever been implemented that you are aware of?
Yeah, the county is pretty strict on their mitigation. As a matter of fact, they have, when you do one of those mitigation plans, they have people that come out and follow up, because like sometimes when those trees are planted, some of them will die. And so they come back, and if a year later, let's say you planted 3 and 2 of them died, you're going to have to come back and plant those 2 trees again. And they have a follow-up over a period of years. I think, I can't remember, but it's 5 years. And
Might be 10.
Yeah,
Depends upon what it's related to.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. And they actually do, they have a couple of companies that's all they do is come out and enforce mitigation like that.
Yeah, I can't imagine, replacing a 100-year-old tree. I don't know what size trees they replace them with, but you're losing that root system. You're losing the sediment, the phosphorus loaded sediment. We'll get back to one thing Joshua said, because this was really discouraging. And I mentioned this before, and I got some rationalization, but the fact is, during one of the committee members, a contractor was, soliciting permission or a permit, or applying for a build. The plans had a lot of red flags anyway. And then one of the committee members brought up the fact that this same contractor killed 13 trees by piling dirt on them. And the other members didn't, and I'm not exaggerating, didn't even acknowledge what he or she said. So, they just green lighted the build. And so, that's when we have that level of, disregard. I mean, it's a fellow committee member. Listen to the, she deserved the right to be listened to. And that was really discouraging. But, the fact is, I don't know what, it seems to me like, we should devote a little more attention to this, have a little more written down guidelines. I'm glad, at the very least, I stimulated some discussion about this tonight.
I think I just want to throw in a couple things after this, but one thing we have to be careful as committee members is, we're not an arborist. So to say, like, do we have the professional qualifications to say that tree was killed because of dirt or something? Like, we do got to be careful with that. Just like as a committee, we can't be re-engineering plans from a professional engineer, you know, with a licensure and stuff like that. Like, you know, so, you know, not to say that we can't give credence to, you know, committee members or board members or community members, you know, that, you know, say these things, but we got to be careful that we're relying on some professional opinions for some of this type of thing. I will say though that there, you know, I think it's a great idea to put a question on the survey about would the membership continue to support the density reduction? And I say continue because, and maybe Linda can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I'm pretty sure the community has voted twice or 3 times in the past to institute density reduction. And so there is data to support that the community, at least in the past, now this was in the past a ways at this point now. So to say it's the same community today that it was then, not the case, but, you know, do we have the same mentality still? You know, it could be likely, you know, so having a question on the survey about that. And then once we know that the community may support that, then a plan could start to be developed, you know, be worth the effort then at that point, knowing the community supports something like that, to start to put together what you said, like a life cycle cost analysis, of cost benefit analysis on, you know, to go off what Sam said, you start reducing the budget by taking dues out, and then how does that affect, you know, all of that balance there, you know. And I think there is some things that the ACC could take a look at and bring some new policies back to the board. Like Linda said, you could investigate whether reducing that minimum footprint of a house, you know, like, do we need to have a minimum footprint, or does it need to be as big as it is? You know, we could also explore whether the fines are big enough or not. You know, and that stuff is all stuff I think is well within the realm of like being able to change, you know, whether we can override the Whatcom County overlay in regards to, you know, what trees can be removed or not. I'm not so sure. You know, I tend to agree with Linda that we should probably let the county, you know, deal with that, you know, personally. And I say this quite frequently, you know, the reality is the county council and the city council should grow a pair, and they should just restrict development in the watershed altogether instead of charging the taxpayers $100 billion over 50 years. Because I guarantee you, to buy every parcel in the watershed probably isn't even going to cost $100 billion. And the longer we wait, the more likely it is to get closer to that $100 billion price tag. But I think the reality is you're probably never going to see that happen. You know, but maybe it's a possibility. That's always something I've wondered. You know, Seattle has a watershed that you can't even step foot in. Like, there's armed guards guarding their drinking watershed, like, you know, kind of thing. And here we are, like, just, oh, you know, develop the whole thing, you know, oh, we'll change zoning a bit so it's not quite so dense after we've already made a bunch of dense zoning, you know, kind of thing. And it's a little bit of a crapshoot there, but, you know,
So restrict it after we're all here. That's kind of,
actually,
are we doing it like that?
Well, I mean, by restricting all the development in the watershed, they're essentially condemning every undeveloped lot, and they would have to buy those lots from those people. Like, that's the only option to stop development, which is the main cause of being on the 303D impaired list and having a TMDL related to phosphorus. You know, I'm not sitting here like gonna say like all the research and this is like the best solution. I just think, you know, I've never seen anywhere it's actually been discussed as a possibility.
Like NIMBY.
No, AJ, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I've said this before. We're the beneficiaries of some very bad decisions that were made 50 years ago that allowed this watershed to be developed. But the fact is, they can take more stringent actions. So they can start restricting, because the fact is, we don't know how much phosphorus people put on their lawns, or, you know, I assume we have a no phosphorus fertilizer ban, but we don't know how much is being put on the golf course or how much pesticide is being sprayed on the golf course or the deposition of pollutions in the marina. So the EPA can come in here. Actually, the state is responsible, but they can start restricting marina operations, golf course. They can actually shut it down. They could have a no motorized boats on the marina. So I think, you know, I'm not saying they're going to do
They
this
tried to
or-
do that, and it was the busiest county council meeting there ever was, and they ended up settling on restricting 2-stroke motors, but not 4-stroke motors.
Okay, that makes sense. They're locked.
Yeah,
in.
they got a lot.
I'm not-
It wasn't
they're
just
not
the
gonna-
lake owners that pushed back
Actually-
on that one. It was everybody. Like they
Oh.
had people out the council chambers into the atrium of the courthouse, from what I understand.
2 strokes are dirtier than 4 strokes, aren't they? I thought
Yeah,
they-
that's why they banned the 2 strokes.
two-
'Cause
they banned the 2
4
strokes.
strokes don't.
Yeah.
I don't know this for sure, but my understanding is 4 strokes don't leak
that's
and
true.
are less
Yeah, they're-
likely to leak those petrochemicals.
Yeah, well, there's leakage and then there's, yeah, pollutant deposition. Well, anyway, they can take action. So, you know, everybody should be interested in this. Because I looked at all the testing. I mean, we're fortunate to have the Institute of Watershed or the Watershed Institute of whatever it is right here on Western Washington University. They test regularly, as do others. And it's going in the wrong direction. I mean, it's going to continue to get worse. And, you know, eventually they could do something like that. So,
Yeah,
Again,
and
we'll
I
bring it up
think,
again.
you know, if we put a question on the survey about density reduction, and you know, we had good support of that. You know, like Brian said in a previous discussion with you, there are entities that will buy lots. You know, previously with density reduction, is my understanding that it was like split 3 ways between Sudden Valley, Whatcom County, and City of Bellingham, but I could be wrong on that. I didn't.
Water district.
Water district too. So I mean, all these entities have stake in, you know, in that. And so would we have to pay for all the lots, or is it just a portion? You know, that would all have to be discussed. We'd have to go back and sit down with the city, you know, and discuss, and the county, and discuss their willingness to contribute to that and everything. But it would be good to have an idea from the membership that that's something that they would want the effort to be put into. Sam?
I got one thing there. There's actually incentive to take out some of those majestic trees by loggers getting paid some premium money. So there's incentive at this time for folks to make profits off of taking those trees besides getting them out of the way of a house. And so we need to change that as far as the incentives to pretend they're logging. I mean, it's like, but they can actually come in and log these lots. It's what they did behind our place. And they sold the trees were actually given to the tree trimmers or the tree removers, and they logged it. And that's how they got paid, so that the developer or the owner only had to pay $1,000 or so to have a dumpster for some of the slash, because the rest of it were just quality trees that they had a huge incentive to get those trees down to the mill. And there's a place there that not only is Sudden Valley, but it's county. It's like de-incentivize the removal of those trees.
Well said, Sam. That's, yeah.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm done with that.
Yeah, it's unconscionable. At the very minimum, we should take away incentives for cutting down trees. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, maybe our fees need to be somewhat proportional to what those majestic trees are worth. That's, you know, and I think having an environmental planner, and, you know, we could work with the ACC on trying to make sure we're tracking some of those numbers that we've talked about, like Josh was saying, like how many trees were actually taken down that weren't allowed to. Like there's a lot of speculation on, you know, and it's easy for us to be like, oh, the whole lot was cleared, so tons of trees were taken, you know, dozens and dozens of trees taken down that shouldn't have been, when in the reality it could have just been one or none even, you know. And so we would want to have some data to make good informed decisions on that. But yeah, I think that's a very good discussion, and we're actually preparing the survey right now and putting those last final planning questions on there. And so I think that's a good one to add to the list.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, and thank you for. I'll keep this in front of you, and I hope the messaging is clear to
Thanks, Kevin.
the builders. Okay, bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Have a great night.
Okay.
All right,
I
I
will
found
say
everyone's-
too, Kevin, you could always join the ACC. We're looking for members now and next year. So, there is that too.
The
But
board.
it is late and I think we're all getting sleepy eyed. So,
Is there other owner comments?
oh yeah, sorry. I figured they would have raised their hand already, but that was a long discussion. So,
Yeah, if anybody else would like to jump in, just use the raise hand and I'll bring you over.
Negative, Ghost Rider.
all right.
Yep.
Do we got a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
9:51 p.m.
Whoop.
Second. All right. Everyone have a good night.